Story number 1. Today is my wife's mom's 44th birthday. After the guests left, the three of us gathered around the festive table, making conversation on various topics. When we had a few more drinks, I decided to turn off the TV, and Stephanie's mother-in-law turned on the tape recorder. Soft dance music blared from the speakers. Nicole, my wife, eventually apologized and went to bed, leaving my mother and I alone. As I watched her, I couldn't help but notice her amazing beauty. Despite her divorce from my father-in-law, she still hadn't found another partner. This struck me as odd, given her undeniable attractiveness. She's a former athlete, and it shows in her face and body. There are no wrinkles on her face at all. It's so pretty, like a young girl. After thinking about it for a while, I made a suggestion. "Mother-in-law, let's dance." "Come on. Why? When was the last time I danced? 5 years ago, maybe? I can't do it. I've forgotten how to do it." "It'll work. I'll remind you." I stood up and took her hand. Stephanie's mother-in-law stood up, put her hand on my shoulder, put the other in my palm, and we began to gently circle the room. At one point, she lost her rhythm and, laughing, wrapped her arms around me, pressing herself against me. Supporting her, I grabbed my mother-in-law by the waist so she wouldn't fall. Well, you see, mother-in-law, we didn't forget, and everything worked out. The music was captivating. We continued our quiet dance. Now, I was holding my mother-in-law by the waist, and she had both arms around my neck. We stopped in the middle of the room, and I pulled her to me and kissed her on the lips. "You're a very interesting woman," I said to her, unexpectedly to myself, complimenting her. My mother-in-law looked at me with surprise and, suddenly embarrassed, lowered her gaze. I felt embarrassed too. Stephanie's mother-in-law did not move. I quietly lifted her face by the chin. Her bewildered lips obediently reached for mine. Her eyes were closed and her eyelids quivered. "Son-in-law, dear, have we not gone far with you?" She whispered slowly and opened her eyes a little. But she didn't go anywhere, but on the contrary, after a second's hesitation, she pressed herself even tighter against me. The beautiful music did not end and filled us with the energy of love. Then my mother-in-law looked at me and, smiling, grabbed my hand and led me to the bedroom. That's when it all started. And now, 3 weeks have passed. My mother-in-law takes me by the hand again and leads me around the corner of the house to tell me the big news. I'm pregnant, my favorite son-in-law. I couldn't believe my ears, although I realized that after that night together, there was such a possibility. I was very scared, but still decided to tell my wife everything. She cried a little and yelled at me, but then packed her things and went to a friend. That's how our life together was over. I stayed at my mother-in-law's house and called her just Stephanie. Soon the divorce papers came. And then it was time. Stephanie gave birth to my beautiful daughter. I was very happy. I had wanted children for a long time. Even my ex-wife came over to see her sister. A year and a half later, Stephanie surprised me again by telling me she was pregnant again. She'd been to the doctor, had an ultrasound, and she was told that we're having 3 more girls. I'm just shocked at such good news. I couldn't imagine in my dreams that this could happen in my life. And the day came when all 3 girls were born, beautiful, healthy, and like their mom. But they are still small, of course. It is not clear who they look like. Even my ex-wife cried with joy when we took the girls home. She forgave us and was very happy. Such a huge happiness in our family. She became a second mom for them, never left them for a minute. That's how I became a father of 4 beautiful daughters. And my wife is now my favorite former mother-in-law. Story number 2. Ella complained of a headache again, for the 3rd time that week. Disappointed, I turned to the wall and gestured sternly, hoping she would realize her mistake. After only 5 minutes, however, my wife's breathing became steady, and I realized that she had fallen asleep. Left alone with my own thoughts, I tried to fall asleep, but without success. Unhappy with everything, I grumbled as I headed for the bathroom. This is absurd. Has marriage really come to this? Would it really be over in just 6 months after the wedding? However, before reaching the bathroom, I stopped at the slightly ajar door to my mother-in-law's room. I don't know why, but I froze on the threshold. One look at the bed was enough to make me even more angry. No, I had a normal relationship with my mother-in-law, but I was sure that all our problems with my wife were because of her. It seemed that my wife was elementary, embarrassed to be with me when her mother was sleeping behind the wall. Of course, I realized that it was all my own fault, because I had not yet earned an apartment, but it did not prevent me from being angry with my mother-in-law. However, this time my anger was quickly replaced by something else. Thanks to the fact that Anna, that was my mother-in-law's name, always slept with a dim nightlight on. I saw that she was half open. I moved closer to cover her, but got a little glimpse of her legs and what was above. Suddenly, Anna held her breath for a second and opened her eyes, staring directly at me. I froze for a moment, and the situation was very awkward. I couldn't breathe, and I was already standing in the bathroom in front of the mirror and imagining what a scandal it would be. And for this, these thoughts made me sweat. There was a noise behind me, and before I could react, the door opened and Anna entered the bathroom. I wanted to say something, to apologize, but when I turned around, I froze as if I'd been hypnotized. With great difficulty, I whispered quietly, "Anna, it's not what you think." She didn't let me finish. The woman's hand suddenly rested on my shoulder, and lower, and I heard her beautiful voice. Aha! I figured as much. Son-in-law, don't worry. I looked into the blue eyes of this beautiful blonde and couldn't figure out if she was mocking me or if she really understood me. It didn't take long for the answer to come. My mother-in-law suddenly kissed me. It was kind of crazy. I can only imagine what Ella would do to me if she saw all that. After all that, I crawled into bed with my wife and turned my back to the wall again. Suddenly, I hear her say, "Are you asleep?" I said, "No." "Are you offended?" Ella whispered and pressed herself against me. But I pulled away. The next morning was very disturbing for me. I now did not know how to communicate with my mother-in-law. Would it happen again? Or maybe it was just a moment of weakness. But then my wife, as usual, left for work an hour earlier than I did, and everything came to light. My mother-in-law leisurely came out of her room in a short t-shirt, stroked her belly, and smiled affectionately at me. I was in the bathroom at the time, brushing my teeth. I was scared to look her in the eyes after yesterday, but she came over, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Don't worry, honey. It's okay. It's going to be our secret. I know my daughter doesn't sleep at night to help you relax, and any man needs intimacy or he'll leave for someone else. And I don't want a man as handsome as you to leave us. So I will replace your wife until she realizes her mistakes. That's how we live now, and I'm fine with it." Story number 3. Recently, my partner and good friend Michael has been having a lot of problems with his mother-in-law. She seems to be angry all the time and doesn't appreciate him at all. This is very sad because Michael is a wonderful person. He recently moved to our town from somewhere else and got married about a year ago. I even witnessed his wedding. He and his wife live happily together, but the constant interference from her mother causes them a lot of stress. It's like she can't see them happy. I often wonder why she doesn't just stay in her village instead of coming to the city all the time. Their apartment is already small enough for a young couple, and her mother-in-law's frequent visits only add to the cramped conditions. Not to mention the fact that she constantly starts lecturing them on how to live properly. Who likes that kind of intrusion? Poor Michael is really tormented by her constant attention. He even told me he's considering divorcing his wife just to avoid seeing his mother-in-law. That's strange, because at the wedding, the bride's mother seemed like a very nice woman. She was petite, cheerful, and looked young. We even exchanged a secret kiss in some inconspicuous place while we were looking for a hidden gift. However, Things seem to have changed for the worse since then. I can't help but wonder if it has something to do with the fact that she raised her daughter in a single-parent family and was used to being independent and making her own decisions. I advised my friend to try to understand her better, to establish a closer connection with her, perhaps even a night alone with her. After all, she is a beautiful woman who attracts the attention of men on the street. But Michael only shook his head and made a gesture indicating that someone must be crazy to suggest such a thing. It's a complicated situation, and I hope they can find a way to resolve their differences soon. Michael has asked me to come and help his mother-in-law this weekend in the countryside. Since my wife and daughter are enjoying the sun in Miami, I had a free weekend. We were even able to get a couple days off from our boss. We drove to my mother-in-law's house in our decrepit car. Surprisingly, his mother-in-law was a normal woman. I don't know how they behave in private, but she behaved well in front of me. As soon as we arrived, she insisted we take a shower and then joined her at the table. We had a drink and started chatting about various topics. It turned out that my mother-in-law and I had common interests. She wanted to show me her animals' chickens and pigs, but Michael's wife stopped her, thinking we were already tired from work and the trip. We were sitting at the table under the awning, enjoying the fresh air when it started to get dark. Michael's wife tucked him into bed and also said she wanted to go to bed as they were very tired after the trip. The young people seemed to have a lot to do after drinking. Her mom tried to help make the bed, but I took her hand and asked her to stay with me for a while. It's really wonderful to be in her company. We sat down and had a nice chat. Madeline poured us both drinks. We drank very little, just to keep each other company, not to get drunk. At one point, Madeline felt the need to go to the bathroom, and as she walked past me, she accidentally tripped. Luckily, she fell into my lap. Our eyes met. Madeline smiled, and in the dim light, she looked even more beautiful after drinking. I pulled her gently against me and kissed her, and we had a good night on the grass behind the barn. The next morning, Madeline looked even younger and stunning. I helped her rest and relax during the night. We spent the entire weekend together, connecting on a deep level. When it was time to leave, tears came to her eyes, and I said goodbye to her. Madeline whispered in my ear, inviting me to come visit her anytime, as she would always be happy to see me. Of course, I gladly agreed to visit her more than once. I had never met a woman like her before. Being young and inexperienced, I found her wisdom and experience in the bedroom delightful. Plus, she was already kinder to my friend, not yelling at him as much. She just needed to relax, and I was happy to help her do that. In doing so, I helped my friend not to divorce his wife and mother-in-law,